In an old, grand house on the outskirts of town, there was a room that no one ever entered. The house had belonged to the Morgan family for generations, and each member of the family had been warned never to go into the room at the end of the hall on the third floor. The room was always kept locked, and the key was hidden away. But the stories about what lay behind that door were enough to keep even the most curious at bay. The house had a reputation for being haunted, but no one in the family had ever seen anything out of the ordinary, except for the strange occurrences that seemed to be centered around the locked room. Lights flickering, whispers in the night, and cold drafts that would come out of nowhere. The current owners, Sarah and Michael Morgan, had learned to live with the quirks of their ancestral home, but they too respected the warning about the room. One stormy night, Sarah and Michael's teenage son, Daniel, was home alone. His parents had gone out for the evening, leaving him in charge of the house. Daniel was a typical teenager, curious and prone to pushing boundaries. As the storm raged outside, he found himself wandering the halls of the old house, his mind drawn to the forbidden room. With the power flickering and the wind howling, Daniel felt a thrill of excitement mixed with a sense of dread. He had always wondered what was inside the room, and tonight, he decided to find out. He knew where his parents kept the key, hidden in a drawer in the study. With a racing heart, he retrieved the key and made his way to the third. The hallway was dark, lit only by the occasional flash of lightning through the windows. Daniel's footsteps echoed as he approached the door at the end of the hall. He hesitated for a moment, listening to the storm outside and the creaks of the old house. Then, with a deep breath, he inserted the key into the lock and turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a pitch-black room. Daniel fumbled for a light switch, but there was none. Using the flashlight on his phone, he stepped inside. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing a room that seemed untouched by time. Dust-covered furniture, old portraits on the walls, and an air of... As he explored, the door behind him slowly creaked shut, but Daniel didn't notice. He was drawn to a large, ornate mirror on the far wall. The mirror was out of place in the otherwise antique setting. It was pristine, its surface gleaming despite the dust that coated everything else. Curiosity overcame caution, and Daniel approached the mirror. As he looked into it, he saw not just his reflection, but something else, shadowy figures moving in the background. His heart pounded as the figures grew clearer, taking on the forms of people in old-fashioned clothing. They seemed to be reenacting scenes from a long-forgotten past, but none of them acknowledged his presence. A chill ran down Daniel's spine as he realized the figures were the spirits of his ancestors. He tried to back away, but his feet felt rooted to the spot. The mirror's surface rippled, and the figures turned to face him, their eyes hollow and filled with an otherworldly light. Suddenly, the room grew colder, and Daniel felt a presence behind him. He turned slowly, and standing there was a tall, shadowy figure, its face obscured by darkness. It reached out a hand towards him, and Daniel felt an overwhelming sense of fear. "You shouldn't be here," the figure whispered, its voice echoing with centuries of sorrow and anger. "Leave now, before it's too late." With a burst of adrenaline, Daniel broke free of the mirror's hold and ran for the door. He fumbled with the handle, his hands shaking, but it wouldn't budge. The shadowy figure was getting closer, its presence oppressive and suffocating. Desperate, Daniel remembered the key in his pocket. He jammed it into the lock and twisted it frantically. The door flew open, and he stumbled out into the hallway, slamming the door behind him. The whispers and cold vanished instantly, leaving only the sound of his own ragged breathing and the storm outside. He ran down the stairs and out of the house, not stopping until he was at the end of the driveway, drenched by the rain. When his parents returned later that night, they found him huddled on the porch, terrified and shivering. Daniel never spoke of what he had seen, but he knew that the stories about the room at the end of the hall were true. From that night on, the key was hidden away even more securely, and the room remained undisturbed, a dark secret waiting for the next curious soul to uncover its mysteries.